all sorts of different music. My brother was listening to early Genesis, Pink Floyd, and my sisters were listening to David Bowie. So that all went into the melting pot. And then I got into anyone who played the saxophone, and then whittled that down a little bit. And there was a sax player I was obsessed with called Michael Brecker for a while, and then I went back to John Coltrane, and then I went back a bit earlier to Charlie Parker, then earlier to Louis Armstrong and Jelly Roll Morton, and along the way listening to Deep Purple and so many different bands. So it's very difficult to pinpoint a specific person. But my dad obviously was a huge influence on my music, and he took me to see Buddy Rich. So when I was 13, he took me to Ronnie Scott's to see Buddy Rich Big Band, and that was kind of a turning point for me. There was a guy called Steve Marcus who had massive hair, who'd get up and do these solos, and I was just transfixed on him. And because I used to try and play drums as well, I was transfixed by Buddy Rich's playing, and so I could not believe what I was seeing.
Do you remember the first single you ever bought?
That's a tough one, isn't it? First single. Well, I remember the first cassettes I bought.
Mm-hmm.
I bought two on the same day, and it was Deepest Purple, obviously best of Deep Purple, and the soundtrack to E.T.
Really?
Which is quite an eclectic.
Yeah.
But I would have been about 9.
So you were quite into sort of heavy rock and metal and that kind of thing?
Well, my brother and his friends and my cousins were into. He was into, as I said, early Genesis, Pink Floyd, Deep Purple, a little bit. Not so much. That came later, maybe. Mm-hmm. Well, what was interesting was this guy, the guy from the Buddy Rich Big Band, the sax player with the big hair. Mm-hmm. I met him a few years ago. Mm-hmm. Steve Smith, the drummer, had put a band together of ex-Buddy Rich alumni, and he introduced me to Steve because I told him that Steve was part of the reason that I got into playing music. And we spent most of the time talking about Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin, whereas my dad was really pleased that I'd been and seen a jazz gig and liked it, but then my hero was actually more interested in Jimmy Page and Ritchie Blackmore. So,
what would you say? What is it about the sax that arrested you? What would you say? What is it about the saxophone that?
I think.
What does it do for you?
The saxophone is a very vocal instrument. It's very close to the human voice in a lot of ways, and it's very. Most instruments, if not all, are obviously very expressive, and people can get their own personalities through on them. But the saxophone has a huge range of expressiveness and different people. A lot of it is to do with the shape of your own throat as well. So not, just two people playing the same instrument aren't going to make the same sound. But I basically I started on the clarinet when I was 7, and I didn't know what a clarinet was. So it was one instrument that my dad hadn't learned, so he sent me off to school to learn.
Did he introduce you to that, or did you just sort of pick it up on yourself?
Well, it was his old clarinet.
Nice.
So I think we were given a choice what instrument we wanted to learn at school, and so he chose that for me, and then the natural progression from the clarinet is the saxophone.
I guess it would be sort of like inevitable, wouldn't it, really, like where, because obviously you were being raised right around your dad who was constantly playing, and like, do you remember he was rehearsing a lot, and did he play a lot in the house and things?
Well, he used to practice the trumpet a lot. He was obsessed. He used to absolutely love it if he worked with musicians. So, because some of the times he'd be working with comedians, and then obviously other times working children's television and all these different things. But he'd always come back absolutely buzzing if he'd done a gig with the BBC Big Band or some of his heroes, and they'd given him a little tip on how to get the high notes on the trumpet, and then you'd hear him playing these really weird exercises just for lip flexibility. So he wasn't incessantly practicing, but you'd often hear trumpet blasting from underneath you when you're trying to sleep.
You were saying just a minute ago that you had a go at playing the drums.
Yes.
Other than the sax, what else do you actually play? What else are you what else have you dabbled in?
So I still play the clarinet quite a lot. So play the saxes, the clarinets, and flutes. Because when you play one in the session world, when you play one, you're almost expected to play all the others with those. And then I play piano, and I dabbled on various other instruments.
Can you give us a 20-second blast?
There you go. The thing is, I can play. I do a lot of arranging from the piano and writing music, and I have accompanied people, but the thing is, because I get to work with such amazing piano players,
An example? Who have you been working with?
Well, I'm very fortunate when there's so many really great players. A guy I work with a lot is Mark Edwards. I've been working with him for 20 years, and he still has my jaw on the floor. I hear him play, and I'm embarrassed to even do that in front of him. I hope he doesn't see this. And no, I've got so many great. It was the same with the drums. I thought, yeah, I'm pretty good now, and then I'd do a gig with this amazing jazz drummer, and I'd just hide the sticks away. I think, okay, I'll stick to the saxophone. But in a lot of ways, I wish I'd kept it up. Kept up the drums, but piano I tend not to play in front of people, but I do a lot of.
Gotcha.
I do a lot of arranging.
Sorry for dropping you in that.
No, that's it's fine. I have played in public, but it's really embarrassing. There's a few times I was playing on gigs, and I'd notice a really good piano player in the audience. I think, oh, don't judge me, don't judge me.
I can't help noticing. I don't know whether the camera can pick it up, but obviously you said that you were writing a bit of music there.
Oh yes.
This leads me to the next question. Obviously, you read music.
Yes.
Would you say that reading music is it something you learn? Is it difficult to learn, or would you say it's one of those things you've either got it or you haven't? What would you say? Because I tried.
Yeah.
Mate, and this was basically through. Like singing, because I used to try and sing once upon a time.
Right.
And then the piano teacher would try and show me the notes and things and all the quavers and semi-quavers. No, it was just I just thought it was dot to dot. You know?
Right. Yeah. Well, sometimes that would be a better use of it.
Trying to do shapes around the sheet of paper. I won't say what of. I'm just saying. No, but like, would you say that it's something that's is it within you, or is it something that is?
When I started learning music, I learnt to read at that stage, and I think it's like reading words. I think it's the earlier you do it, the better. You know.
Driving a car.
Yeah. A lot of really amazing musicians don't read music. Apparently, Stan Getz didn't read music. How he could play what he played without being able to read music, I've no idea. But he just had an incredible musicality, and famously, Paul McCartney apparently doesn't read music. But again, I'm sure some of these people must be able to read a certain amount. I can't. I don't know how a concert pianist can read a score and just be able to play it. But I'm often expected to sit and sight read music in a recording session. There's varying degrees
But you can imagine some people would probably. You can't blame people for like finding it tough. You can imagine that there are people that it's a very.
Of course. Well, I think it depends whenabouts you try and do it. Sometimes I've got friends. Some of the most musical people I know don't read music because it has to be inside you to make the music. Sometimes people can rely on the dots too much, and so they don't let the actual music come out because they're playing exactly what's written on the page. And the people who've got the music inside them, they can hear the music. It's more from the passion point of view. It's a gross generalisation, of course, but I think one isn't better than the other. But for what I need to do, I need to be able to do both. But I feel I can play music better when I've internalised it, when it's in my memory, or well, not even in my memory. It's just it just comes out naturally.
I think I want to put a copyright on this question, right? Because I want this to be my question. I've asked one person it.
Yeah.
So far on my interviews, a girl called Claire, the makeup artist.
Yeah.
And I want to put a copyright on this question because I think it's an awesome question to ask somebody like yourself or someone in the industry. What does music do for you?
Right.
Personally.
Yeah. Right.
In a couple of nifty sentences, what do you reckon? What does music do for you?
Well, music has always been my obsession, my passion.
It's in the genes.
Well, yeah, it's definitely in the genes, but it's my job as well. But fortunately, it's my hobby, and I absolutely love it. And there is something. There's for any mood I'm in, there's something that will help either offset it or enhance it.
Therapy?
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. Not everyone loves every type of music. It's a very personal thing, there's just this sort of. It has an amazing ability to sort of take you with it. Well, if it's made well.
Well, I remember saying to Claire, it keeps me alive.
Right. Yeah.
That interview was almost a year ago, and I still stand by it.
Right.
And if I did an interview in a year's time, I'd still stand by that.
Right.
It keeps me alive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
mean?
Yeah. The next question I want to ask you, I love that. That was more than a few nifty sentences.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, you can cut some of the nifty sentences.
I don't believe in editing.
Cut some of the not so nifty ones out.
Okay. Obviously, as you've said, that you make your living as a musician, and what would you say? Everything has its pros and cons. Everything has its good points and bad points. Obviously, you're one after the other. What would you say are the positives and negatives of trying to make a living as a musician? Because there's thousands of people out there that do it.
Yeah.
And some people get more lucky than others. What are the... I'm trying to think of the word. What are the... there's a word, I can't think of the word at the moment, but what are the good things and what are the bad things? Do you know what I mean? Do the positives first.
The positives. I mean, I tend to look on the positive side of everything, almost to an annoying degree.
Yeah, that's cool though. Like me, I guess. I'd like to think like me.
I love the excitement of not knowing what's around the corner, not knowing what's
in
coming
life
up.
in general.
Yeah. And career wise, I mean the two together. I love the fact that I get to do all sorts of different things with musicians that I love working with, people who inspire me. I get to work with some of my heroes. I
noticed actually, going when I was doing some research on you, I noticed that you worked with Amy Winehouse.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Really? Was that in the last couple of years or 2 or 3 years?
No, it was earlier on.
I should say the late Amy Winehouse because we've only just lost her in recent months, haven't we?
Absolutely.
But was this before she became
Yeah, well, it was before and whilst she was becoming well known.
Nice girl.
Oh, she was absolutely lovely. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't bumped into her for quite a while
Mm-hmm.
before she sadly died. But yeah, oh, she was absolute sweetheart.
It's quite strange actually because I was in Shoreditch with one of my brothers on Sunday, and I don't know whether you know Shoreditch very well, but there's like lots of markets and like places and lots of musicians on the side of the road and things. And then we were listening to this. I don't know who it was. It was some kind of diva that we were listening to from the 60s or 70s. That's how it sounded like. And then we were just walking past, and my brother said, you know, yeah, I can hear Amy Winehouse in that voice. You know, I can see what the inspiration was. You know, like her style.
Yeah.
What would you say her style was? What was she quite into?
Oh, well, there were quite a lot of influences. There were certainly a lot of jazz influences.
Mm-hmm.
The main one I noticed was Billie Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
But and then you could hear a bit of Erykah Badu as well, more recent. But she really knew her stuff. She'd really listened to the masters, and I remember doing a thing with her with John Dankworth's orchestra at the stables in Wavendon, and I can't remember what the song was she sang, but it sent a shiver down my spine. And it's not often people do that. It was a big band number. I mean, when you've heard the greats sing the songs, it's difficult for anyone else to really put a stamp on them. But I remember being utterly blown away by how she sang.
It's quite a rare occurrence, isn't it? Really, someone that talented to just be dragged out. You know what I mean? It's few and far between these days. Isn't it? But just going back to, that was a great example there, by the way. But just going back to the positives, like, you know, of being a musician. Yeah, sorry, we got a sidetrack there, but it was a fascinating story, though, don't I?
So yes, it's great to be able to work. I mean, I absolutely love creating music, whether it's on a gig for, you know, one night only, or for an album, or.
Do you remember the first thing you ever wrote?
The first, I don't know.
Were you quite young when you did it?
Yeah, I've been writing music from quite an early age. Probably not as early as Mozart, although maybe without knowing it. So creating music.
I think Mozart wrote an opera when he was 7 or something.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, I'd written 3 by the time I was 4, but you don't hear about that, do you? You know,
But what was the first bit? How old were you? The first bit first piece that you'd ever written that you presented to an audience? Because people write stuff and they hide it away.
Yeah.
And don't want people to see it.
I was probably 13 or 14, something like that. I dread to think what it sounded like. I've recently found some recordings that I wrote when I was 15 and played all the instruments on as well. My dad had an old 8-track recording system. It was all reel to reel then, so it was all tape. So you had to bounce all the tracks down to add others, and so it was really slapdash. And some of the playing is awful, but it was quite fun to look back on. And there's a bit of me singing. There's a bit of me singing that will never ever hear the light of day. But I'll keep it just for when I want to torture myself.
But like, obviously, when I talk to musicians, and you can show total empathy with this. Just going to the negative side of it now, people, they can either get to a point where they feel they can't go any further with a musical career and they quit. It just gets to a point where there's negativity around them. It's self-belief, lack of self-belief, whatever. I shouldn't say whatever. That's a very dismissive remark, but it's the lack of self-belief makes them turn away and give it up. Should we say? Can you understand totally from a musician's point of view why it's easy just to jack it all in?
Yes, I think so.
Do you know what I mean? I'm just going to the negatives now.
Yes.
Of making a living from a musician.
I think it depends what kind of thing you do and what you set out in the music business to achieve. Because if you're chasing fame and fortune, then that can be very elusive in the music business. And even more so now than it used to be, despite all the sort of reality TVs and everything.
Which is what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So I think it can be difficult. It's an oversaturated market. There's lots of talented people out there, and also there's lots of people chancing their arm and I mean as there always have been. Well, we all are to some extent, aren't we?
No, I'm not going to put my head in front of the camera, but I've got the courage to say that.
Chancing his hand there. I think there's so many people out there that and not necessarily enough work for everybody. That it is easy to get disheartened, and
because it's fierce competition.
Yeah. Where I am, because I do my own projects as well as doing things for other people. So, and I write music for people and for myself. So if one thing dries up, there's usually something. And I the way I look at it is nobody owes me a career. Nobody owes me a gig, a recording, and unless I do something that somebody would actually want on their record or on their gig, then I might as well do something else.
What about TV and film? Have you done any sort of like soundtracks or anything, or have you been involved with anything for like presentation of a film or like documentaries on TVs or anything?
Well, I've written songs that have appeared in films. I wrote one for An Education recently, which was great fun. I got to work with Lone Scherfig, the Danish director, who's one of my heroes. She did Italian for Beginners, which is she's part of the Dogma group of directors. And so I was a massive fan, and when I heard that I was working with a singer called Beth Rowley at the time, and so we were asked to write this song, and it was great opportunity.
Forgive me for my ignorance, but like I don't know. This is how I see it. Say like if you were writing a score for a film, does the person who's doing the music have to actually watch the film and just basically go along with the feel of the moods of what the film is? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where basically the musician is making up the music as he's watching the film. Is that what they do normally?
It depends on the director and the way they want to do it. Usually the director would have a very specific idea of where they'd need the music, what kind of mood. I mean, I don't know. I can only go on how I've not written music specifically for a film. This is a song. They wanted a style of song, style of lyric for the film.
Would you welcome that, like doing film scores?
Absolutely. If the right one, yeah. I mean, absolutely.
Like, have you ever watched a film where you've looked at it and you've thought that bit of music does not go with that moment in the film? I think, not in a pretentious way, but you just think to yourself, I could have done something better. Well,
I not necessarily I could do something better, because there's some film writers that the certain Hollywood films would go for, because they give a sort of generic backwash to everything. That is, you actually need a huge talent to be able to do. It's a massive talent, but to me it makes a lot of the films sound the same. It's just one or two of them. They're the sort of massive name ones, and it probably really helps sell the films as well. But I like the sort of quirky. Well, you know, there's so many really talented film writers.
My dad, a favourite of my dad's, obviously it was more along the electronic side, but he really enjoyed Vangelis.
Oh yeah.
We loved obviously he did the soundtrack to Chariots of Fire and Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And like we were massive fans of that. But yeah, obviously John Williams is the commercial one. I love the guy who did the Dirty Harry ones. Is it Lalo Schifrin?
Oh, Lalo Schifrin, yeah.
Oh,
well, in fact, I had the
Oh.
amazing privilege of working with both of those people actually.
Really?
Yeah. So I worked with Lalo on a gig with the BBC Big Band years ago, and he was absolutely lovely. And then I played on one of the Harry Potter films with John Williams.
I'm just thinking. I just can't stop thinking of Dirty Harry.
Oh yeah.
Just the intro.
It's amazing.
The intro to that.
You see, those guys are awesome. Yeah.
Amazing. God.
Those sort of soundtracks are incredible because they're very expressive. They're very different writers, I think, John Williams and Lalo Schifrin, and very recognisable as well.
It's like Ennio Morricone as well.
Yeah.
That's another one that just knocks me.
Yeah,
on my
absolutely,
arse,
absolutely.
Just amazing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, just from like stuff like the spaghetti westerns to Once Upon a Time in America. That's a brilliant soundtrack.
Yeah.
Have you seen that film?
Yeah.
Yeah, with De Niro. It's just,
absolutely.
Just some of the stuff. But listen, we could be going on all the time about all this stuff.
When you're putting those ones together, you've got to put Bernard Herrmann, who did all the Alfred Hitchcocks as well.
I think his last one was Taxi Driver.
That's right, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Which is stunning.
And he passed on shortly after
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
Taxi Driver was just
you have to throw him in there as well.
No, of course. Any of your favourites?
Those are the. He's probably my favourite, Bernard Herrmann.
Really?
He did The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. That's an amazing. It's a great film, and fantastic soundtrack. Lalo's score for Bullet is amazing as well.
God, listen, Ben. I've got to be careful here because I could just drift away here.
Yeah.
Talking about all this because we could be talking about films for the rest of the. There isn't enough time on the tape.
Oh dear. Quick,
not
quick,
the tape.
quick,
not
quick.
the digital.
Quick, next question.
The memory card. This is the one that when we talked about it earlier, you had to think about.
Oh yeah.
What's the most bizarre experience you've ever had on stage?
Okay, well I gave this a bit of thought because I've had a few bizarre experiences on stage.
Keep it clean.
All clean experiences. And I think it was I was doing a gig in Abu Dhabi with Humphrey Littleton. I can't think when it was, probably about 10 years ago. And he introduced me on the gig. Said, ladies and gentlemen, Ben Castle. And halfway through the next number, somebody came up to me on the stage and said, I've got your old fireplace. And this guy had basically gone to our old house, and they'd obviously auctioned off various things in our old house. And so this guy in Abu Dhabi was telling me that he had my old fireplace. And it was true. He actually lived quite near where we used to live. And so, yeah.
Had you ever seen him around? When you saw him, did you recognise him?
No, not at all. No, but he'd obviously, after we'd sold the house, the people who bought it then decided to knock it down and sell off all the stuff. So, yeah, that was quite a surreal moment.
I like to ask what he looked like. What did he look like? He's like,
It was covered in soot. Had this sort of massive umbrella thing.
Well, listen. Right, what we're going to do is we're going to split this interview into 2 parts.
Okay.
But I think that one of the most important things, something that I actually want to say from a personal point of view, is that you and I, over the last 18 years, have crossed paths twice.
Right.
The first time, because I remember when I first started communicating with you, you said that you remember. But I was doing this. These were in the days of my kind of drama days, acting days, when I kind of fancied myself a little bit. Still do to a certain degree, but I just am a bit more sort of discreet. But I was doing Hello Dolly, and this was I think April 1994, and like I said, I was just full of myself in those days, still am, but I was one of those stupid little waiters during the waiters dance. And lo and behold, you were about 20 feet away from me, down in the pits.
Right.
And you remember that?
Yeah.
I remember doing Hello Dolly. And like I said, it's just incredible. And it was quite strange actually, because I think that time your dad wasn't very well.
That would be right.
Yeah, and I basically, I learned, quite quickly in the production that you were there. And obviously that went from Monday to the Saturday, the matinee evening, or I think they run from the Monday until the Saturday.
I think it was a week.
It was a week's production, and there was part of me, obviously just on a serious note, there was part of me that really just wanted to just go over to you and just say, hey, I wish your dad well, that kind of thing. But I just didn't have the balls to do it. And like I said to you on the phone, didn't I? I just said that I just wish that. There's part of me that, you can't go back on anything, but there's part of me that just wished I could have done, but I just didn't have the courage to sort of say it, because as I got older, I probably, I can be a victim of my own mouth sometimes, but that's a good thing as well, because that makes me a very expressive guy. But probably in my teen, I think I just left my teens then, so I was getting a bit more courageous in speaking, but I still didn't have that. And then the next time was almost precisely 10 years later, in 2004.
Okay.
Because you came to visit the music studio where I was working.
Yeah.
And I remember we were quite excited about seeing you, and I think I even mentioned that to you then, because you came in to the studio, and I remember shaking your hand and just having a little. Very, very brief chat with you, because obviously you had to get on with your work, you brought all your stuff down, and that work didn't materialise, but you got your paycheck and that was it. And that was it, money for nothing. but isn't it incredible how here we are sitting here today? I think it's the 24th, is it? 24th of April? What's the date today? 24th?
It sounds about right.
24th of April.
It's certainly April.
2012. And here we are. We've kind of brushed shoulders in the last twice in the last 18 years. Even in 2004, if I'd turned around and said that in 8 years' time I'm going to be trying to have my own talk show and try and get something off the ground, I would have laughed in your face. But isn't it amazing how people's lives change, and you know what I mean? The directions people go in and the path. It's one of the beauty. It's like what you were saying about not thinking too far ahead and not expecting what's around the corner. I think very much the way myself. Just basically living for the moment, if that be a better way of saying it. But it's incredible, isn't it? How here we are sitting today, and those times, a couple of times, you would never think it, would you? And it's really weird to actually say, hey, we've been in very close connection once before, but no. Like I said, it was just one of those points that I just wanted to get across to the audience. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But I want to say, I want to go on to your dad, if that's okay. The late Roy Castle, a national treasure, an icon. I was saying to you earlier that I was listening to LBC radio about 3 nights ago, and they were talking about your dad then. Literally almost every single person that I speak to it's at the top of their heads.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's somebody that people don't have to dig into their memory about.
Right.
He's at the very front of people's minds, it seems. Mention a name and everyone knows. So, you know, it's wonderful, like I said, to be able to be in a position to talk about this. Would you mind, just in a nutshell, just sort of like telling us a little bit about him, if that's okay?
Right.
I mean, like, you know, just a couple of, like, you know,
yeah,
a couple of minutes, and just sort of like who he was and what he, you know, his career a bit.
Well, he was born. He was an only child, born in Holmfirth near Huddersfield in Yorkshire.
Mm-hmm.
Lived in the same bedroom as his parents till he was 15. Got long story, very short. He got involved with. I think his mum had wanted to be in show business and then kind of pushed for him to do it, but he got the bug very early on and absolutely loved it. Got involved with comedians. The fantastic Jimmy James. There's a famous routine, but it's in the box routine, which is amazing. There's snippets of it on YouTube, but not the whole thing. Unfortunately, I wish they'd put the whole thing up there because it's very very funny. He was a very very funny man. He did that. He also was a singer and multi-instrumentalist. He went over to he had to do national service, and then went over to America and was involved in a TV program out there called The Gary Moore Show, which was the equivalent of like the Tonight Show or the Jay Leno Show back then, and got spotted by Frank Sinatra, who gave him a record deal with Reprise, and then, but unfortunately it wasn't the best time to be releasing that kind of music because the Beatles and Elvis Presley were dominating the music scene, and he came back to the UK, and I mean, cutting out lots of very interesting, lovely bits. Became the presenter of BBC's Record Breakers, which lasted for...
Am I right? Because obviously he did some films as well, didn't he?
Yes.
He did a horror film.
Yeah, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. Wow, that's a good one, yeah.
That's research for you.
Yeah.
And am I right, he actually covered Bruce Forsyth in the Generation Game?
Well, Bruce was very ill one week, and it was a live TV
in the 70s,
program.
early 70s, I think.
Would have been early 70s, yeah. Yes, Bruce was very ill, so he took over for a show.
And he was on the Morecambe and Wise show, wasn't he, as well?
Yes, well, Morecambe and Wise were on his show before they had their own show.
Really?
They were really good friends, and Eric Morecambe introduced my parents together.
Wow.
My mum had said to Eric, because they knew each other very very well already, and my mum said to Eric, if ever you're working with Roy Castle, could you introduce me? And so in the interval of a show they were doing together, Eric brought my mum into my dad's dressing room and said, Roy, this is Fiona and she's in love with you, and left them there together, just the two of them. So that was if it wasn't for Eric, I wouldn't have been here.
And going on to the Record Breakers thing, that ran from the 70s right up until the early 90s, is that right?
Yeah, it was certainly over 20 years. He was doing that from before I was born. So it would have been early 70s to he died in 94, and the programme carried on for a few years without him.
And his co-host was it Norris McWhirter?
Well, it was Norris and Ross McWhirter initially.
Right.
And
so you met Norris quite a few times.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I used to often go into the studio and watch them record.
Nice man.
Yeah, he was lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Very impressive with his knowledge and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Couldn't believe it. Well, even I doubted, surely he must know the questions, but he never did. He never knew the questions beforehand.
Really?
Yeah, and he was only ever caught out once.
It's like a computer, isn't
Yeah.
it? You just sort of like feed in the question.
Yeah,
yeah.
Amazing. And Ross was the same, his twin brother. But the program carried on for a few years afterwards, I think, because then Cheryl Baker joined in, and then Chris Akabusi.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I just remember, like I was just saying to you earlier, like such a euphoric, figure, your dad, and my family. There's 5 kids in my family, and we would all be crowding around the TV set. But like I said to you, when I was like a teenager, because he was such like an upbeat guy. But I guess it's fair enough for a teenager. You can be very rebellious, and you're changing from one person to another, and you can have a bit of a sort of sniffy sort of streak about you. And I was a bit of a miserable sod, for a few years in my teens. But your dad, who was so much older than me, just belittled my attitude. I just kind of thought, well, this guy is just so upbeat and so positive about life, and here's me being a miserable sod. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's amazing, and like I said, it's now I'm at the age that I am. I would like to think that I've got a bit more energy and a positive energy than some young people. I see it around sometimes, but it's just amazing. But the question that I was going to ask you was, like, living with, a very, very, very famous dad, in Britain, what effect did it have on you? Having such a famous dad. Like, for instance, my dad's was a doctor. And at school, and this is just like a small town, like, kids, particularly in secondary school, kids clicked on that my dad was a doctor. And they'd all be calling me, hey, Dr. Doolittle, all this kind of making little cracky little jokes and things, snarly little comments. And that was just in a small town. My dad was a very respected figure, still is, in town. But, and that was just my dad being a doctor in a town. What was it like for a dad who was one of the most famous people on TV?
Well, I mean, I obviously never grew up with anyone else's dad, so it was all I knew, and he was already established before I was. We'd get stopped in the street, and people would ask for his autograph, but it was nothing ever. People would.
There'd be no sort of overzealous fans or anything.
Not that I remember, really. I mean, some people, I don't know. Some people at school might take the mick or whatever, but it was never a weird one. Fortunately, he was sort of well liked by our generation, I suppose.
Yeah, everyone.
So there wasn't much that people could pin on him, kind of thing. But
so you never really ever remember being discriminated or sort of like prejudged about things? Was there ever any times where you felt, do you know what I mean?
Well, I could tell sometimes that people wanted to be friends because they wanted to meet him.
Connect with your dad.
Maybe, that. But I soon learned to
figure that out.
Figure which ones were genuine and.
Was it usually musicians who were doing that?
Well, no. I mean, this was. I'm talking about school age. I don't know. I mean, for a lot of people, the novelty of meeting somebody famous, particularly at that age. I mean, I still get starstruck now with certain people.
It doesn't last long though, does it?
No, not at all.
I find that when I was working in the industry, that when we met last, I found that when you actually meet someone, filthily famous, sometimes, within 5 minutes, it's gone. You just sort of you realise, especially if you're What I found about famous people is also if you're very just genuine with them and just real with them, they seem to warm to that.
Yeah.
And let their guard down. I find.
Yeah.
But basically, if you want to give them tittle tattle, they'll give you tittle tattle back. But if you're just sort of quite genuine with them, I find that.
But it's
you know what I mean?
it's not necessary. It's not the fame that daunts me. It's the people that I really respect. It's usually comedians or comedy writers that I get starstruck. Yeah, because comedy is my other main passion, really, or another huge passion, and so I've got so much respect, and I have this annoying urge to want to try and be funny, and it's the absolute last thing to do. So that I've got all these things going around my head. Try and be funny. No, don't try and be funny.
At this moment in time, just sidetracking for a second.
Yeah.
At this moment in time, who is your favourite stand-up at the moment? At this moment in time.
At this moment,
not in the past. I mean, just right now.
Well, again, like my music, there are all sorts of different people, and being put on the spot, I know I'm going to miss some people out, but there's one guy I just think is absolutely brilliant. But what is also brilliant is half the people at his gigs are looking at the people who are laughing, thinking, "Why are you laughing?" But he's utterly genius. It's a guy called Edward Axel, very excited by him. Paul Foot as well is great. Very alternative, but very, very funny.
And one of your all-time favourites? One or two?
There are
Connolly, Carrot, all the kind of stuff. I don't want to make any decisions, but they're just examples.
Yeah.
Or some of the American ones.
I saw Ross Noble quite a bit and quite a few times. I saw Bill Bailey recently again, and he just every time I've seen him, he's had me crying with laughter. Stuart Lee I saw recently, is very, very good. He's one person I'd be very frightened to have a conversation with, because I've heard him sort of destroy almost every type of person. Well, no, in a brilliant way.
Oh, right.
No, I'd be. Not
in a bad way.
No. He's so incredibly clever with the way he puts things. But I know people who know him, and he's a lovely guy. But I'd be slightly in awe. It's people like that I get starstruck by, rather than somebody who's just famous.
Yeah. Just going back to your dad again, like I said, I need to work on this, because I sidetrack all over the place, but maybe it's a good thing. What would you say is one of the proudest moments you had with your dad?
Well, there's so many. I think towards the end, seeing the impact that he made on people's lives, when he was ill and then after he died, the postman had to stop cycling. He had to come by van because we had so much post, and just I think seeing the impact, and you get a few crazy letters from people, but that's inevitable. Haters or whatever. I suppose you see it more readily today with Twitter and Facebook and things like that. But you just get the odd cranky letter.
Because I was going to go to that actually. Sorry, just to lead you into that. Because in 1992 he was diagnosed. Was it 92?
Would be, yeah.
92. Because I actually remember, believe it or not, I remember seeing it on Sky News. And like everyone, it was just one of those sucker punches for anybody that was watching it, really. But because he was this upbeat, lovable guy, very, like I said, euphoric. what was his kind of immediate, if you remember, what was his kind of immediate attitude towards when he was first diagnosed? How was his attitude towards the cancer in itself?
Well,
because of the guy he was,
yeah.
What was his attitude towards the whole thing?
But obviously he wasn't best pleased. But his attitude was, why not me? Because so many people would say, why me? But cancer affects so many people. You know, we all know somebody who's got it, had it, died. Yeah, his attitude was, just because I'm well known, why shouldn't I get it? Which was, which was a kind of different way of looking at it. And he just thought, right, let's beat this. And he was quite embarrassed by the amount of attention he got, and he didn't court it. He was never really a publicity courter. And so he was really embarrassed that he was on the front page of the papers quite a lot. So because he would get a little bit better, he'd get a bit of good news, and then he'd be on the front of the paper, and then it would be bad again, and front of the paper.
I seem to remember one picture of him standing next to Jasper Carrott and Bernard Cribbins, I think. I'm quite sure about that. I definitely saw him with Bernard Cribbins on Sky TV. I remember that.
Okay.
I remember all this sort of stuff.
Right,
this was like 92, 93. And also, what I remember, I was a big fan of LBC then. I still am to a certain degree. And those were the days when I used to listen to Robbie Vincent and Steve Allen, I think, or Mike Allen. I remember he started doing adverts on LBC about, cancer and all that kind of stuff. So I remember that. But no, it's incredible because like what you said, he didn't court any of it. He seemed like he was very because he let his work do the talking. Seems is that a fair enough thing to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he just didn't want to look like, because he knew plenty of people that did want the attention the whole time, and whilst attention is part and parcel of being in the public eye, he didn't really court it unless obviously he had a program that he was doing or a show. So yeah, he was embarrassed by by the amount of publicity, but also overwhelmed by the support. That was a long way round. Saying probably towards the end was the proudest moment, just seeing the impact it had. I was always proud of him. He was a very funny man. He used to do a one-man show, and even though the jokes didn't change much in the time that I knew him, which was 20 years, they still made me laugh. It was great. And so I'd always watch him and be proud and hear people laughing and think that's my dad making them laugh. It was even as a kid it was kind of a buzz.
He made so many people happy.
Right.
Didn't
Great.
And he passed in 94, and to this day, 2012, like I said, he's at the top of people's minds. You know, and I was going to ask you that there's a charity in his name. I'm sure we just had the London Marathon on Sunday.
Yes.
I'm sure there was people that were in that course for that. So I'm sure there must have been. But it's what's the name of the charity?
The Royal Castle Cancer Appeal.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? It's been going on for a long time.
It's part of cancer research, and my mum's been very involved in that. But yeah.
Just so we know, do you know the web address of it?
No, I don't. I'm afraid.
I'll do some research and put that on there.
We'll slot a web address in here and some more useful information. If you could overdub somebody saying something actually interesting over a lot of this, then
just closing this side of things.
Right.
And probably one of the most poignant questions I could ask, if that's okay. What do you miss most about him? 18 years later.
I miss his presents. He used to give me great presents. No, it was a play on words.
I'm slow, I can't help it, I'm sorry.
So I just wrecked the mood there. So.
Sorry, I'm a bit dozy today, I'm sorry.
No, he was always a great, he was a great mate as well. He was a great dad. We used to have a lot of fun together. We used to enjoy playing music together, listening to music together, and it was great. And the whole family we're very fortunate, we're a very close family. We all, the rest of us all still meet up very regularly.
Do you all live in quite a close radius?
Yeah, at the moment, well, we've all travelled, but at the moment we all live quite close to each other, which is great. So we try and meet up as often as we can, and yeah, it's just it would be amazing. He's still here, yeah. I don't know. There's not one specific thing I miss about him, but.
But is it nice to know that he's still very, very, very fresh in people's minds?
Oh, it's amazing. It's so lovely. People say, "Oh, sorry, you probably hear this all the time," but blah blah blah. Yeah, but I absolutely love it. It's nice that people still remember him.
Well, with this camera that we're shooting this on now, I took it into the Sony Centre.
Right.
To basically ask, because I was worried about the sound and everything.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about the sound, and they were saying, "Oh, who are you interviewing next?" And I said, "Yourself." One of the guys recognised, yourself as a musician, and I says, "Oh, not related to Roy." I says, "Yeah," and then all the 4 guys behind the desk all pricked up.
Oh, really?
And just sort of like, really, and all this kind of stuff. So,
okay, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Right.
That is just so awesome. That, like I said, it's at the tip of people's tongues. That's just amazing. But and what about you, Ben? What about what are your hopes for the future?
Well, I'm working on a few new projects myself, which I'm excited about. I've been very fortunate to work with some great people, and I hope to continue working with some interesting people. But I also want to do my own thing and take control a little bit. And so I've got a couple of albums that are almost finished, and I'm working on a couple of new things. So I'm very excited to be doing new things.
I was going to say, do you know what? This is something I didn't touch on, but what kind of have you been abroad quite a lot touring?
Yes.
Have you toured quite a lot abroad?
Yeah.
What's one of your favourite countries that you've? Is there any parts of the world that you particularly enjoy touring?
Well, the first tour I ever did, the first pop tour, was in Brazil. It was with Gloria Gaynor. When I think I was about 18 or something like that. And that was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. I've never been back, unfortunately. I've had a couple of offers, but they clashed with other things. So, but I just loved it. It was brilliant, and it was a good bunch of people to be away with as well. Good fun. Yeah, I mean, I've been very fortunate to go to a lot of amazing countries, but unfortunately, you often see the airport lounge, the hotel, the gig.
And that's it.
And the airport lounge
exactly.
again. So it's quite frustrating. I went to Japan for one night, and then a couple of weeks ago I went to Cuba for a 1-hour gig, and so you go all that way.
Yeah, you texted me there, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's right. It's the
and so it's great. You get a real brief snippet, so you see this amazing. Different culture for a while, but then you sort of think, did I dream that? Have I just been there? Yeah. But yeah, I think the one that really stays with me, possibly because it was my first one, but it was Brazil.
Listen, Ben, it's been wonderful. I mean, do you know what? We finally got round to it.
Yes.
After 5 months preparation, we've finally done it. Listen, it's been. honestly, it's just the pure fact that on the memory card there isn't
Right.
lots to know, but I could go on a lot longer. But listen, it's wonderful talking to you.
Likewise.
Thanks ever so much for telling us all this stuff. God, there's a book there.
Right.
That's the next step, isn't it?
I don't know about that.
Okay, you take care.
Right, and you,
lovely
yeah.
meeting you
And
again.
you, yeah.
And I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.